So do we
Okay,
need to
we are
introduce our...
now live. So this is Group 5. We're doing our discussion on the Derby Foods and how Mary Griffin at Derby Foods is handling things.
Do we
So
need to state? Do we need to state who's all here?
I'll just send that in the email to him.
Okay.
In the video, it'll show up when I copy and paste the video. It'll also show everybody's little picture at the bottom of the screen.
Perfect.
But also when I post it to the discussion board, I will make sure I include everybody's name. So appreciate this. So the quick synopsis of the case: we got somebody who recently got promoted. Didn't like what the production line was doing. Went down and started yelling at people. Then the district manager went back to that person's boss and said she's got to do something about it. So it escalated very quickly. And when they were doing their pre-production conversations, it was obvious that the team that the promotion took over wasn't connecting with the team. It's probably a good way to put it. So, what do you think? We're going to try to keep this call down to where we're done by 9:35. So please keep that in mind as we're answering the different things. So some of the case facts. What do you think is one of the big issues to this case?
Well, from my opinion, they're very steeped in how they've done things. And because the company's been there for 150 years, the guy that he replaced, that Simon York replaced, has been there for 27 years in that capacity, as it's stated.
Mm-hmm.
If they've been there for 27, they had their way of doing things. That team understood it. And bringing somebody new into this mix is not going to be accepted very easily.
Well, he wasn't new. He was a promotion. So he was promoted from within the group. Because
Okay.
because his former boss was the man that retired after 27 years.
Oh, thank you for the clarification.
I think the biggest issue is that there's not an understanding of how management works with the people below them, how they work with the people above them, and then how they go ahead and deal with mistakes, I guess you would say it, or how they can go and better themselves from mistakes. A lot of time when I was reading this, all I thought about was Jim Collins' the book Good to Great, which I don't know if you guys read that yet in any of your classes, but it just talks about everyone being on the same mind and how everything goes to like the main thing that everyone's doing there. So I mean, Mr. York had one way of doing things and didn't understand there's other people and there might not have been clarification. I don't think the understanding of how teamwork between everyone is supposed to work. I think that's the thing, is they just don't understand. He doesn't understand how teamwork works and how the teams and how he as a manager is supposed to work with the other people.
Do you think that had anything to do with the trust factor?
It could. You know, I mean, he's a brand new promote up. Maybe he's never been in a position of that type of leadership before.
So do you think he may be trying to prove himself?
Yeah.
I think he's going a little overboard, and if that's the case, because here's York, been promoted for not very long, but what's he doing? I mean, I think he's overstepping his bounds as a manager, especially by yelling at everyone, which shouldn't have happened to start with. I think he's not confident enough, because someone inherently does that, is not confident about their own, so they take it out on somebody else. And I could see that Mary didn't want to have to deal with the situation, but she knows she had to.
Yeah. Well, here's one of the things I saw was, he went and chewed out the production worker because what the labeling wasn't to what he was expecting. Okay.
Now he also he also took that a step further. Sorry, but okay. So he yelled at him for what he thought.
Right.
The second page where it talk in this board in the last brand review meeting, they sat.
Right.
York presented the financial analysis. And he noticed a computer error.
Yeah.
Obviously embarrassed.
Yeah. So I think
he spouted off again.
Mm-hmm.
So why wasn't that taken care of at that time before it started going into production?
Yeah, well, and I looked at it this way. If they were getting ready to do a new production, why didn't they run a production sample so that they could verify, you run one, look at it, is this what you ultimately want, and have that open line of communication to alter it instead of going down and chewing out the production worker, because he's only saying up what he's told to do.
So the production person who actually who printed the label was told what to print. As a brand manager, he should have been inspecting it from the very get when it went back down the chain and okayed it.
Yeah,
he was out of the loop. He was out of the loop on multiple things. The first thing with the brand, and then also in the creation of the presentation, he had no idea.
Yeah, and one of the questions I wanted to ask too was, because he did a great job as the person working for the manager, is this an appropriate promotion?
I wonder what training he received, which they haven't. Nowhere do they discuss the training that he received.
It does not.
So I wonder, is the production team underneath him, or should he have gone to their manager and said, "Hey, this is what I feel is incorrect," and so I wonder how's the hierarchy of the company, and also did he receive training? I know that my wife got promoted to manager one time, and in the 3 years that she was manager, she never got trained once on how to be a manager. I thought that was really interesting. So you're a manager, you've never been a manager before. How does the company want you to manage? And she's like, I don't know.
But some businesses just promote you because you're the best in that job. Mm-hmm. So if you're the best, then maybe, in fact, I was talking to somebody else, we're talking about, you see salespeople that they're the best salesperson. They go out and they're really great at hunting and gathering and doing all the sales stuff, right? And then so you promote them to be sales manager, and they fail miserably because they don't know how to work with the people. They only know how to go out and do sales, and that's where their passion, that's what they strive to do.
So obviously there's a major breakdown in training.
Mm-hmm.
And this understanding of how they are their individual roles in the company as a whole.
Yeah.
That's assuming if he wasn't trained. If he was trained, then there's just a major issue with him himself.
Well, yeah, so you probably have both a training and a communication problem.
Probably.
Well, so if it wasn't trained, that's a communication error. If training was provided and he didn't learn, that's also a communication problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to look at the last paragraph here of where it talks about Simon York, where he's getting called to Mary Griffin's office. He acts in this paragraph is like everything is great, everything's okay. It's my opportunity to sit down with the president now, show her what's going on. He thinks he's all in the right, according to this, whether he's got any training or not.
So
it's always your fault, not mine.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't show any responsibility whatsoever in that last paragraph when it's talking about him.
Well, and I think part of that, when you think about how the assistant set up the feedback, she avoided telling him why he was coming.
Which tells me there's a communication error.
Yeah. So can you imagine that meeting for the feedback? He's going in there thinking everything's hunky-dory, and she's got to have the conversation about hey, this behavior isn't acceptable.
So I
How many
think that's
times have
one
you been
thing
called in by a manager or something, not knowing what it was about, and felt like you were kind of blindsided?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. That was last week.
That's what this is. This is exactly what this is.
Well, I think one of the things
Yeah.
that I wrote in my case study when I submit my case studies form is if I was Mary, I wouldn't even say anything. I would just ask how he's doing and then get his perspective. So if she's a good manager and she's there to, make things work smoothly and get everyone's understanding is I think she would not say anything and just have him talk about all the stuff that's in the last paragraph as well as figure out where he's at, how he feels, and then go ahead and just bring it around and be like, I'm happy you feel this way. Here's a concern that we have, and here's how I think how we should fix it. I think it's interesting, like in the four cores of credibility that we read this last week, or supposed to be reading this last week.
Mm-hmm.
He brings results. He's definitely capable of doing what his job is because he was the assistant brand manager and then went to brand manager. So he was not like he went from sales to manager. He was still within
Right.
the same demographic. Then his intent is good, and then his integrity. Obviously he's able to do it. I think he's just lacking on how he presents his intent. Like he's intense. He wants everything to be perfect. That's his intent. It's just the way he goes about that. So I would say that out of the four cores, he's missing on the intent or not understanding what that intent is. So I hope that Mary's intent is to figure out how he feels, go ahead and present the situation like, hey, this is just something that's come to our concern. Let's just fix it and make the company better overall, because it's all for the company. It's all for the employees, all in general, not just him and not just pleasing his thing, and trying to teach him how to better present himself to his fellow employees.
But do you think he'll respond as a group as a whole, knowing that in his meeting before, he said there's no excuse for it, it should not have happened?
Well, in my opinion, if I was Mary, I would say you made a mistake by one, chewing out someone in public, which you shouldn't do because you don't want that to happen.
Right.
And then two, going to yelling at someone. So you've made a mistake too. So one, I can go ahead and bring you to the floor and just tell you this all in front of everyone else, if that's the way you feel like it's supposed to happen, and yell at you in front of everyone else. Or you can become a team player and you can do things the way that we want the company to do it. So I think that's how I would present it and be like, hey, this is the way it is. You don't want this to happen to you. You've made a mistake. We're doing it in a closed scenario, in a understanding, in a non-conflict way. So does that make sense? That's what I would do. So
Yeah. So do you think her role is, part of her role is reestablishing the culture or creating a culture?
Yes.
yeah, creating a culture and then creating that culture of trust, or recreating that trust. So that way he could go to the production floor and say, hey, Jim, this is what I saw. This is what I feel like. Let's go ahead and talk it over. Or, talk it over with the manager and be like, this is what I feel like. This is the reason why. How do you guys feel? Like, just come to more of a discussion instead of a...
Yeah, not a chewing out, but a discussion so you can go, hey, this yelling at the production workers isn't going to fly.
And obviously by Mary Griffin sending and scheduling a meeting and using her secretary, the assistant, to schedule it, calling people out in front of everybody is not how this company does it.
Right. Yeah, and even at that point, I think Mary even has to coach the assistant on being direct about why he's coming to her office.
That would have helped.
I think that would have definitely helped. So what do you think Simon's role is in establishing or maintaining the culture?
I think Simon was upset just because of the fact that this isn't something, obviously, that's a norm in this company.
Mm-hmm.
Or he wouldn't be getting upset with, or having shown that he was mad when he was coming up to Mary. And I think that that was kind of that, at least to me, what showed what this company likes to treat people. And that is, everybody should be respected. At least that's the way I took out of it. But being done, and Simon was very unhappy with it.
Yeah, well, I kind of looked. Here's something I looked at too: is if he's got to be off yelling at people, was there a line of communication open prior to, or if not, maybe they need to work on that to say if there's a production problem, how do we stop it and correct it without creating massive rework, or because the rework is a huge cost too.
Yeah, from what I could see here, I think Simon and or that they get my names mixed up here. Shelburne, York should have been the ones that got together and talked about this. And instead of York taking it out on everyone, it should have been a meeting between those two to solve the issues, since they were the managers in charge on both sides.
That would have been probably the proper way to do it.
Right.
And that probably would have prevented ill feelings from happening. Probably would have been a better solution in the long run. And probably would have created a large level of trust.
Right.
Yeah, and when you look at the things about the team that Simon was part of, now was like rolling their eyes and that type of thing in the initial meeting, tells me that there was something wrong from the get-go. Yeah, he got the promotion, so did he not talk to that team? One of my questions was, how did he treat the team prior to his promotion? That they weren't willing to work with him after the promotion.
Well, I think one thing that was pointed out was that in the last paragraph I was stated earlier, is saying he's at the bar high form. Let's see here. His peers seemed to be excited about his approach and the ideas that he had presented. So he has from his point of view, he thinks that his team seems excited about the way it is, but as Mary could tell in that last meeting, after the error, the team was not excited, and then they were like shuffling papers and looking away, wanted the meeting to end because they were just berated in front of their peers. And so I think he has tons of energy, and I think he's a good employee to get the results done, but he's just lacking the empathy side of being a manager, or that personal relationship with a manager, and forgetting that we're humans and we make mistakes. But I think he's kind of forgetting that aspect of, you're no longer the assistant, you're now the manager. The assistant probably didn't have to deal with the relationship side of things because he's not the assistant manager is not the actual manager. Now that he's the actual manager, he needs to learn that part of being the manager.
Yeah, so how do you think, so what do you think the team member's role is in establishing or maintaining the culture?
Well, which one specifically are you referring to? Top down or from the bottom up?
Well, I think you got to look at both sides of it because, because if you get in a spot where you're not respected from either side, you're not going to be an effective manager. But if you're looking at providing feedback to York and Griffin and that type of thing, and then also maybe people aren't speaking up about what how to support the culture either.
Do you think they're not speaking up because the culture is that you don't speak up?
Could be, or you don't, or maybe they don't know how to address it because it's not a norm for them.
It's an interesting thought here. Let me present this thought for you, and you can. Okay, so as a brand manager, he should have been the one to authorize both presentations, whether it the steak or the actual product. So knowing that he hasn't seen either of them for the first time, that this is the first time, what if this is the sample that they're looking at? And what if this is the meeting to discuss going forward?
Yeah, if you're looking at it that way, some of the comments he made were really inappropriate because he shouldn't have said, "Oh, the client wasn't here," kind of thing.
So that kind of tells me that this isn't necessarily the final thing that we're doing. We're trying to refine ourselves, make and verify the product, verify what we're doing, how it's working, analyzing.
Yeah, make sure everything's on track.
I think that there was trust in the company, and that the team brought forth the stuff without him looking at it, which means that he's not a micromanager at that point in time because he was like made sure it was all perfect, right? So if he had trust that his team was going to do it correctly, and his team had trust on him that he was going to present it well, and then the meeting happens where he berates that person in front of everyone, that instantly loses trust. And then if he goes to the production team, and whether it's a sample or the official thing is, he was trusting the team to do their job, and then they were trusting in whoever they received that prototype from, or whoever the label from, trust that they would do it. So once that happened, I think all trust in regards to him is no longer there, because of the way he's acted when situations has arise. I would believe there's trust among the group. I mean, because I know personally at my work, I trust the people I work around, but then you talk to my management, then it's like, yeah, whatever, you're just manager type thing. So I think the level of trust, I think there's trust above and below him, just not with him. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think he's kind of blown that trust, right?
Definitely doesn't have any trust with those that are around him, especially with his outbursts that he has created in the last few references about him. I mean, he definitely could have been a better situation. I think it all comes back to him. And if he didn't know the presentation slides weren't correct, I think that's his fault.
Oh, totally, 100% his fault.
Because he should have been totally prepared, not waiting for somebody to bring it and present it, or to put it in front of him. But he should have been on top of that long before that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to have that kind of meeting, you would think even, a day ahead of time, have people submit what they're going to show so you can have that one last shot. That's why when doing these calls, I like doing them at least the day before they're due. So if there's an issue, you've got a day to recover. Right?
I agree with that, but I also think I want to be the manager where if my financial team's bringing the documents, bring the documents, let's discuss them, and I trust you guys just to have it all completely. And if there's an error, there's an error. We just get it fixed and corrected.
Just fix it.
I think, that's a micromanagement type of way of having him say he should have checked that, which depending on the how the processes work and the facilities work and the actual management style and also how the company works, maybe that is the way. Maybe he should have checked all this stuff. But as a manager, does he know all the obviously I guess he did because he checked out the error. So never mind. But I'm just saying, if he trusted them.
I think too you have to look at it. Who is your audience going to be for that presentation, right? If it's just your local team to find the errors and to do that, you don't need to review it the day ahead of time. But if it's going to be what you're going to put in front of the client, you might want to look at it one more time the day ahead of time just to make sure that the errors were corrected.
Right, exactly. I'm not saying that he's got to be a micromanager because I know we all don't like micromanagers.
Oh.
And so, but to be able to tell everybody, hey, I need to see this at least the morning before or the night before, just so that I'm prepared. That's what should have at least happened.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I see that. I see that point of view.
Now, also, not necessarily, I wouldn't call it being a micromanager. It's just understanding what his subordinates or employees or patrons have done. Ultimately, as the top dog of the ladder here, if there's something fails, it eventually ends up on his shoulders. That's something that
True.
he failed. So he, at the very end, should have an understanding of that label and understanding of that presentation. Now, whether he gets that just before or in the checks and balances of it, it initially comes down to the leader
Yeah.
of being responsible. So he needs to be able to take the fall and say, "Yeah, this won't happen. We'll learn and do better." Or, "Hey, there's a slight problem in this product. Let's go back and refine it," instead of just blowing up and pointing at everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, when he did the initial meeting and found the accounting mistake, okay, making some of the snipey type comments didn't have to happen. Just fix it, move on. Agree that there's an error, let them fix it. And then when you got to the production line, going and yelling at them, I saw that as two things. One, it broke down the trust, and two, it could have created a safety issue if the production worker got taken away from, focusing on what he was doing.
Yeah.
So if we start looking at that, so what do you think some principles of the effective feedback could be for the situation?
Listen to those around you before jumping to. You need to act before you need to act instead of react.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think in this situation, York could have, when he seen the error, could have just marked it in his mind. No one in that room would have probably known, other than maybe a few members of his team, that it was the wrong slide. If he would have just played it out and let it be done and then take care of it afterwards, no one would have had hurt feelings or anything. I think he would have been probably more respected.
Yeah, he probably would have.
But he threw his respect away because he couldn't control his thoughts, and like you said, he wasn't thinking before he acted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story. So last semester, another story. Okay, so I have this. There's a story about this pilot that was like a stunt pilot that flew propellered airplanes, and the person that was filling up his propellered airplanes for these stunts went to accidentally put the wrong oil or the wrong gas in the engine. So halfway through the flight, his engine caught on fire, and he had to land it. And everyone was thought that the pilot was going to go over to him and yell at the guy and kick him off the field. But instead, he put his arm around the kid and said, "Next time we fill my plane, will you just make sure it's the right gas?" And then went on his way. And the moral of the story was that the kid was with that guy for like the remainder of like another 10 to 20 years. And there was never, ever a mistake ever again. And because the way the guy treated him, he's like, "You made a mistake, just make sure we fix it. We don't have it again." If Simon had done that this time, not only would that have built the trust in his thing, but the financial guy, or the person that compiled that financial statement, I would have hardly ever made a mistake again, just because he knew that Simon had his back and was watching over for him, so he wasn't going to try to hurt Simon or make Simon look bad by accidentally putting the wrong errors in there.
Yeah. So, what do you think would be a good, effective way for Mary to have the discussion and make it productive?
Which discussion are you referring to? The discussion of not reacting, of not pulling people on the carpet?
Well, it kind of goes to all of it, because...
Or the compliment to you is to the assistant, to giving her a clear direction of what the meeting's for.
I think you need to eventually need to cover it all, right? I mean, unfortunately, the assistant needs to do a better job of saying what the meeting's for. because I almost feel bad for Mary having to give the feedback to Simon, because he's going in there, hey, everything's great and this is going to be my next idea, blah, 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 not thinking that the actions that he took in the 2 other meetings were detrimental to his trust and being able to work with the team.
But if the secretary did tell Simon what it was about, don't you think he'd be more on the defensive, and he would treat her the way that he treated the other 2 employees? Like, it doesn't. I mean, if you found you're going to a meeting for a boss, don't you automatically start thinking of like everything that you can go ahead and like, get your guns up, be prepared, put your shields out, type thing. And I don't know, did Mary tell the secretary what the meeting was about, or did she say that Mary just wanted to go and meet? Because when I got the reading, it sounded like Mary said, "Hey, I need to have a meeting with Simon. Will you please have him meet me at this time?" So, but I think, to answer your question that you asked, I think she should just present the company's the main goal, how they deal with mistakes, and then what they do to fix those mistakes, and how they interact with the mistakes. Just say, hey, here's the company's policy, or not policy. Here's the company culture. Here's how we build trust. This is what happened. This is how we would want things done in the future, and just say, the same thing that we'd want from managers. Say, hey, here's the mistake. Let's just fix it. This is how we fix it. No big deal, type of thing. So that's how I present it, and that's what I think should happen.
Okay, one question for you. Let me read this to you. She simply stated that Mary wanted to touch base with York on the co-branding and promotional activities with the Winter X Games. So what's the promotional activities? Is the snack that's got their label on it is the activity. The co-branding is also that. So this meeting is being portrayed to him as what they have done for these games. So she didn't hide what this meeting was about by that, is she?
I think in some ways that she is. I mean, that right there tells me that she's not going to be right out in the open with him until he's sitting in that chair in front of her, that he can say, okay, during this process, this is what I feel you've done wrong. But
now, shouldn't that cause someone to reflect on what they have done and not what they're going to do? Because York didn't think about what he was going to do, what he did. He's only thinking about what he's going to do.
What he's going to do, right?
Yeah, he's thinking about the future, not the past.
See, and the meeting is to discuss the past.
To improve the future.
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm. I guess it would all depend on how he decides to take it. I mean, at least from what my reading, I think he took it as everything's great. I want to talk about what we're going to do from here.
So in his mind, he believes it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess depending on your relationship and your confidence level, if my boss to me and said, let's talk about this, my natural instincts are to say, okay, what have I done and what can I do better? Or what am I going to get yelled at? What did I do wrong?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's normal.
I think for some of us it is.
But that's not normal to York, but
no.
Now in there it says, how did he set the bar? He set the bar high for himself and expected others to follow. How did he set this bar high?
Never having a mistake.
This sounds like it was his first project, though.
And he thought everything was going to come along without a hitch and not have a problem. So when he started seeing problems, he overreacted. Now he's in trouble.
I think probably as an assistant manager.
Sorry, Jeff.
I think probably as an assistant manager, I think he was probably doing really well. But now that he's in a management spot, it's I don't. He may not have paid attention enough to the previous manager in the way he did things to really understand his job. So now that he's in that position, he's creating some failures or has some failures. Act and deal with them.
Yeah.
But he's looking back at his past and he's like, well, I don't feel like I've ever done anything wrong. Everything's always been good. According to.
And he thinks he fixed the problems by yelling at people.
Right.
And so if he thinks he fixed the problem and everything's okay now, it's got to be good.
So if that's where he set the bar, that's not very high.
Right.
Now, whether he thinks it's high or not, that's totally different. But in reality, if that's where he set it and that's how he's going to treat people and he wants others to follow suit, I'm getting out of this company. Because I don't deserve to be yelled at. I don't deserve to be belittled. And neither do you.
Yeah, I think Mary's got a tough conversation to have. But she's got to have to, step up to it pretty quickly, because not doing anything about it will make it worse.
Oh, much worse.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It'll give him a level of false confidence that what he's doing is right and appropriate and ethical.
Yeah, because if you don't stop, and think about this, if you've done something that's incorrect, wouldn't you rather know now than versus 6 months from now?
Yes.
Plus, it'll put all the employees in turmoil because they're all going to hate this guy.
Yeah.
Because they're just constantly letting him do this.
Well, and you could get to a point where you start losing the outside business because there's so much turmoil going on the inside, you can't meet your deadlines or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of effective feedback do you think she has to do to make this happen?
Help him understand their point of views. Because from his point of view, everything's perfect. But if he had understood, completely understood, the product, the production floor's point of view, his financial agent's point of view, and then the boss's point of view, he told and accepted those point of views, he would understand, well, I wouldn't want that in my life. I wouldn't want to be yelled at in front of everyone. So I need to rectify that and make sure that I go forward and I follow the proper chain of command, or I follow the proper procedure to get things. But I think it's to help him understand the point of views of other people. It's just not about results with this company. It's about their culture and their trust, because that's how they've been in business for over 100 years, is because of their culture and their trust.
So she's got to talk more about the behaviors versus him personally, right?
Right.
Okay, now going back to the quote Joseph Smith said, teaching doctrines will correct behaviors better than the teaching the doctrine of behavior, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that play into any of this?
It could. But you got to be able to tell him, too, what behaviors are unacceptable.
I think you would
Some
get
people,
that.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jesse.
I was going to say that some people are just natural about the way they treat people.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are very easy. It's just part of their nature to treat people nice and to take things one step at a time and not get overbearing or anything. And if they see a problem, take care of it when they can take care of it without causing waves. But in this case, I think it was part of his nature is a little bit different. I think he's probably outside of that company. He's probably the kind of guy that likes to yell a little bit and isn't, that respectable probably outside the company. But Griffin good enough to address it. Either way, I mean, no matter what, whether it's sending him to some specific training or whether it's sitting down in this meeting and telling him this is something we can't do, whatever it is that she does. But either way, he's got to have something to help him realize that this isn't what we do as a company.
Let me read something I found out of Forbes.
Okay.
It's about conflicts, communication, and resolving them. It says, while conflict is a normal part of any social and organizational setting, the challenge of the conflict lies in how one chooses to deal with it. Concealed, avoided, or otherwise ignored, conflict will fester only to grow into resentment, create withdrawal, or cause fractional infighting within the organization. If you reflect back upon conflicts that you have counted over the years, you'll quickly recognize many of them resulted from the lack of information, poor information, no information, or misinformation. Let's assume for a moment that you are lucky enough to have received good information but didn't know how to do with it. There is still a communication problem, which in turn can lead to conflict. Clear, concise, accurate, and timely communication of information will help to ease both the number and the severity of conflicts.
So I think that from that, she's going to have to take care of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
She knows what the issue is. He may not. But if they don't take care of it right now, the company's going to start having issues.
Yeah. It's going to fester and get worse. So, and what do you think of having Simon apologize to the production team and the person in the finance that he had the disagreements with?
It needs to go further than that. Apologies are so... It's just words.
Yeah, well, his actions have to take into account, too.
And I think that's what's going to show it. Yeah, sincere apology is needed, but if he doesn't change his own behavior, it doesn't matter what he says.
It's true.
So what does he need to do? Yeah, he does need to apologize, but he also needs to change what he's going to do going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step of rebuilding that trust would just be apologizing. And then
admitting that he made a mistake.
Be known when he does change his actual behaviors.
Yeah. So, the apology is just the first step. It's not the be-all, cure-all.
Too often it is, though. They think it is. It's assumed that it is.
You're absolutely right. It's assumed that if I say I'm sorry, and I don't change my behavior, that doesn't cure it. In fact, it may make the problem worse.
Not only are you a liar or a yeller, but now you're a liar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you get to be a liar and a cheat at the same time, right? So, if we're looking at, the behaviors from the reading, it was like building trust. Each trust account is unique. If you look at what comes out of our book from the Speed of Trust, withdrawals are typically larger than deposits. So he could have had a great relationship with these people prior to this promotion, but really took a big chink out of them.
It only takes one withdrawal to empty that trust bank.
Oh, doesn't it?
I especially think that's true with managers and employees than employees and employees, like same level employees. Especially in manager positions.
I wouldn't say that. I think if you create yourself a trust issue, it doesn't matter what level the person's with, whether it's a peer or a manager. I don't think it makes a difference. You made a withdrawal and you have to fix it.
I have seen where some individuals get promoted, and all of a sudden it goes to their head, and their personality changes.
Oh yeah.
And so this happened, and that could have
Mm-hmm.
been one of these cases
Could have.
where his personality or the position of the promotion, whether it was overbearing to him or whether it was more of his own doing, he changed.
Yeah.
And now he's got a lot of consequences to suffer because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. What about telling the truth? I mean, that's one of the things that Mary's going to have to definitely do is tell the truth, right?
Yeah, she's going to have to be pretty forward about it.
She's going to have to be the example of that clear, concise, accurate, and timely communication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's got to tell them this is the standard we expect. So, because I was just looking at the bold things in our reading, just to kind of. So, what little things do you think Simon can do to start earning that trust back?
Recognize the employees for what they've accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Recognize that putting their thoughts and ideas into this brand and paper or logo, what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously, if they're hopefully everybody working there wants to be a success, so that the company could be a success and they remain employed. All right. So let's see. Let me look at the questions one last time, see if there's anything. Pretty much covered this. So we kind of agree that there's a training issue, that there's a communication issue, and the sooner that Mary deals with the behavior issue, the better it's going to be for the company and the teams, and ultimately Simon. Is there any other things you think we need to talk about on this case?
I think you hit all of them perfectly.
Okay, well then if there are no further comments, I'll thank you guys for participating, and I'm glad we didn't have the echoey calls I've had in the past. So who would like to be the team leader next week?
I'll do it.
Okay. And then Jason, you'll do next week, and Cody, you want to do the week after?
Yep.
And what's that?
I said, I'd love to do that.
Okay. And then Jesse the week after that, and then we'll just stay on a 4-week rotation. So every 4 weeks we'll just swap it.
Sounds good.
So don't forget to send an email to get the password for the week.
Okay. We'll see what that password does.
Yeah. And I haven't figured that out yet, but I haven't seen where else I'm going to use it. But you guys now know it, so I don't think we had too much temptation here. But thank you for your time. And does 9:30 work for everybody?
Yeah, it works.
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
And you guys all know how to do the Google Hangouts?
They've changed it in the last 6 months, so I'm going to have to refresh myself on this.
Well, I think I'm going to do what you did again. What you did. Do you need to unlive this?
I can unlive us.